the last album of Pink Floyd was really the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah? Definitely no more Pink Floyd.
No more, finished. I don't spend my life thinking about Pink Floyd.
They created the soundtrack to a generation. Their music pushed boundaries that had never been challenged. But behind Pink Floyd's mesmerizing soundscapes lay a story of betrayal, ego, and destruction. Now at 78, David Gilmour finally breaks his silence. Gilmour said there comes a time when the truth needs to be told. Pink Floyd wasn't destroyed in a single moment. It was death by 1,000 cuts. London, 1965. The psychedelic revolution was in full swing. From this cultural cauldron emerged 5 young musicians who would change rock music forever.
How did Pink Floyd set out? Were you originally a rock band and you moved into the electronic thing? How did it all begin?
Do you remember?
Yes, gosh, it was a long time ago. We just played for fun when we were at college.
We played for fun and we played R&B,
We used to
the
play
Rolling Stones numbers,
Bo
Bo
Diddley.
Diddley. I mean, like all groups used to in those days. It developed from there. But again, it wasn't a conscious development.
How tightly written are your compositions? Do you do a lot of improvisation when you go into a studio when you're recording?
We do a lot of improvisation in rehearsals. And generally from the rehearsals, we then go into the studio knowing something. Sometimes, I mean, Saucer Full of Secrets was started completely in the studio from scratch.
It must be a really tedious, not tedious, but a really slow way to create because you all work together, don't you?
Yeah.
It
It's a very long
Yeah.
process.
Is there some tremendous musical rapport between the 4 of you, David?
I think on stage there is. Often doesn't really work quite that way in the studio. It's not down to a musical rapport between us.
Pink Floyd wasn't just another band. From the beginning, they were different. Syd Barrett's creative genius set them apart from everything else happening in London. But genius came with a price. By 1967, Barrett's escalating mental health issues threatened to derail the band completely. Enter David Gilmour, a childhood friend who would become crucial to the band's future. Initially brought in to support Barrett on stage, Gilmour soon found himself the band's primary guitarist. Barrett's departure in 1968 left a creative vacuum, one that Roger Waters would gradually fill. Roger Waters, in an interview, said after Syd left, someone had to take the reins. The band needed direction. The transition wasn't easy. Pink Floyd spent several years searching for their new identity, creating experimental albums that bridged their psychedelic past with their progressive future. 1973's Dark Side of the Moon changed everything. The album wasn't just successful, it became a cultural phenomenon, remaining on the Billboard charts for 937 weeks. What made it work was the perfect balance between Waters' conceptual vision and Gilmour's musical genius. It was lightning in a bottle. Gilmour said in a recent interview, "Those were magical times. We all contributed our best and the results spoke for themselves." The band followed with Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, each album pushing boundaries further. But with each success, the power dynamic within Pink Floyd shifted dramatically. The first cracks. During the recording of The Wall in 1979, the cracks began to show. Waters' control over the band's creative direction became absolute. Nick Mason said in an interview, "Roger had a very clear vision for The Wall. The problem was there wasn't much room for anyone else's vision." The situation reached crisis point when keyboardist Richard Wright was forced out during The Wall sessions, a decision Gilmour now reveals haunted the band. Gilmour said losing Rick was the beginning of the end. The band lost something essential to its soul. By 1983's The Final Cut, Pink Floyd had essentially become Waters' solo project. Gilmour's guitar work, once central to the band's sound, was relegated to the background.
Western band into Moscow at that particular period of Glasnost. So, we had a nice, lovely time in Moscow. It's a beautiful city and we were treated wonderfully.
The year 1985 marked a seismic shift in Pink Floyd's history when Roger Waters declared the band a spent force and walked away. But his departure was just the beginning of an unprecedented battle in rock history. Waters didn't simply leave the band, he took legal action to prevent his former bandmates from using the Pink Floyd name, a move that stunned both fans and the music industry alike. However, David Gilmour wasn't ready to let Pink Floyd fade into history. Despite Waters' attempts to legally strangle the band, Gilmour stood firm. Along with drummer Nick Mason and a reinstated Richard Wright, he steered Pink Floyd into a new chapter. This defiant stance proved successful. The Gilmour-led Pink Floyd not only survived but thrived, producing successful albums and selling out arenas worldwide. It was a remarkable resurrection that proved Pink Floyd's magic wasn't tied to a single member, no matter how influential they had been. People thought Pink Floyd was finished without Roger. We had to prove them wrong. Today, the feud between Waters and Gilmour continues on new fronts. Waters' controversial political statements have created fresh divisions. Recent years have highlighted the stark contrast in paths taken by Pink Floyd's former leaders. In 2023, Roger Waters faced significant backlash when BMG, his record label, severed ties following his controversial performances in Berlin. His outspoken political stances, particularly his views on Israel and Ukraine, have sparked worldwide criticism and debate, further distancing him from his former bandmates and many fans. In contrast, David Gilmour has embraced a more personal and familial direction with his 2024 album, Luck and Strange. The project represents a fresh chapter in his career, featuring intimate collaborations with his family members. Working with my wife Polly and our children brings a different kind of magic. Gilmour reflects warmly. It's healing, creating something positive with people you love. This focus on family and positive creativity stands in sharp contrast to Waters' controversial public persona. Meanwhile, the band's legacy continues to be a source of tension between the two artists. Recent negotiations regarding Pink Floyd's catalog rights, estimated to be worth around $500 million, have reopened old wounds and highlighted the ongoing divide. While Waters tours with his reinterpreted version of Dark Side of the Moon, dubbed the Dark Side of the Moon Redux, Gilmour remains focused on creating new material and strengthening family bonds through music. These divergent paths underscore how far the two former bandmates have drifted from their shared history, each pursuing their own distinct vision of artistic expression. Looking back at '78, I can finally say it. Pink Floyd wasn't destroyed by creative differences alone. It was destroyed by the inability to balance ego with artistry, control with collaboration. Today, both Waters and Gilmour continue performing Pink Floyd's music separately. The songs remain the same, but the magic of their collaboration exists only in memory. What's remarkable is how the music transcends the conflict. New generations discover Pink Floyd every day, unaware of the personal drama behind the songs. In his home studio, David Gilmour reflects on Pink Floyd's turbulent history with newfound serenity. "I've made peace with our history," he shares thoughtfully. Pink Floyd created something that became bigger than any of us. That's what matters in the end. Meanwhile, Roger Waters continues his own artistic journey, his redux version of Dark Side of the Moon, generating both acclaim and controversy. The creative tension that once fueled Pink Floyd's greatest works now powers two distinct artistic paths, each shaped by their creator's unique vision. The story of Pink Floyd's destruction resonates as a deeply human narrative at its core. It illustrates how the very creative forces capable of building something magnificent can ultimately tear it apart. The delicate balance between genius and ego, vision and collaboration, proves to be both the source of their greatest triumphs and their eventual undoing. While Waters and Gilmour may never find their way back to reconciliation, their combined legacy endures through the timeless music they created together. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that often the most beautiful art emerges from the most complex and challenging relationships. As Gilmour plays the opening notes of Wish You Were Here in his current studio, his words carry particular weight. The music was always bigger than our differences. Perhaps that's what we forgot along the way. The haunting solo of Comfortably Numb builds to its crescendo, underscoring the bittersweet nature of their shared legacy. For fans worldwide, the invitation stands to be part of this ongoing story. Share your Pink Floyd memories and perspectives on social media. Follow our channel for more deep dives into rock's greatest legends, and stay tuned for exclusive interviews with David Gilmour about his new album, Luck and Strange. After all, the music never truly dies, it simply evolves with each new generation that discovers it. Like and subscribe to the James Goodman channel for more interesting content.
He's trying to prove one thing, that he is the secret son of Prince Charles and Camilla.
55-year-old Simon Charles Durante Day was put up for adoption after being born in 1966, but he says he has proof that his birth parents are in fact the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. He joins us now from his home in Brisbane.
Think of a random man who claims that he's the rightful heir to the British throne. Meet Simon Durante Day, the Aussie man who's making headlines with an astonishing claim. He's the secret son of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. For years, he's been pushing for answers, demanding justice, and even seeking DNA evidence to prove his lineage. But could there be more to this story than meets the eye? Hang on tight, because we're about to explore his extraordinary pursuit for royal recognition.
Joins us now from his home in Brisbane to tell us more. So good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
Extraordinary claims. Not the first time this has happened to the royal family. But where did this belief start?
Well, the belief started in 1994. Really, we started looking at who my parents were when my first son Simon was born. And I said to my wife, he had blue eyes, and my wife said, well, where did the blue eyes come from? And I said, well, I had blue eyes. And she said, oh, you didn't tell me that before. And she said, what age did they change? And I said, 8. So she said, what, 8? And that's where it started. And then when I went to see Nan in 1998, when she was passing away, and I managed to get a small conversation with her while my adoptive mother wasn't around, and I put a picture in front of her. It was in the newspaper of Charles and Camilla, and I said, is this them? And she said, yes. And, I was already looking at that stage.
So your adopted grandparents used to work for the royal household at the time, and so it's your belief that your grandparents were sort of entrusted with you because they worked with the family?
That's correct, Holly. Granddad was a gardener and Nan was a cook. I say in a royal household because that's what I was told. I'm not sure which one, but they were working in a royal household.
Simon Durante Day was born back in 1966 in the English town of Gosport, and by all accounts, it was a bit of a mysterious and intriguing entry into the world. He was soon taken in by a couple named Karen and David Day, who were known to have ties to the British royal household. As Simon grew older, some strange things started cropping up in his family history. Whispers about his birth and more subtle hints that led him to believe his lineage might be a bit different than he was being told. But, of course, the most explosive revelation would come much later, when Simon reportedly said his adoptive grandmother let slip an explosive secret, that his biological parents were none other than the then Prince Charles and Camilla Rosemary Shand, now the Queen Consort.
One of the first things I did once my grandmother told me back in 1998, when I got back to Australia, one of the first things we did was get all the biographies that we could at the time and look this thing up and look at the times to see where Charles and Camilla were, who otherwise could be involved. I mean, just because your grandmother said it doesn't mean you're going to believe it. I did do my research. So the timelines are gaps, and people need to come forward and come clean. I mean, this is. People seem to think I'm getting a big name and money out of this. I'm not getting anything out of this. This is costing me to do this. We're forced to do this because we're tired of moving around Australia hiding this secret that's not our secret.
So why should some bloke from Australia be convinced he's the secret son of the British monarch? Well, according to Simon, his suspicions grew as he started digging into his background, finding that all sorts of questions remained about his adoption papers and birth records. That catapulted him into a quest for answers, launching him from private investigation to very public allegations. You see, the timeline of Simon's birth lines up pretty neatly with the Charles and Camilla history he's maintaining, hinting that the two were an item during their tender years, despite the strict protocols against that sort of thing within the royal family. But getting any recognition hasn't exactly been easy for Simon. His initial approach to the royal family, in fact, fell on deaf ears, a silence that, to him, was as loud as a statement. He reckons it was all part of a massive cover-up, a theory that just kept growing with every letter ignored and phone call not returned. Now, Durante Day's claims haven't exactly been welcomed with open arms by the monarchy at large or much of the public. But that doesn't seem to be dampening his spirits one bit. Every unanswered question stands as testimony, in his mind, to some hidden truth that's just waiting to be unraveled. Determined to get the legitimacy he believes is his, Simon's been putting together whatever information he can about his so-called parentage. He scoured historical records, traced timelines, and even pressed for a DNA test in court against Charles himself. Why hasn't this test been granted, and what would it reveal? Well, the thing is, the British royal family is all about tradition and decorum, and Simon's claims of wanting a paternity test strike right at the heart of those carefully guarded values. If his claim even remotely holds value, it wouldn't just be disruptive for his own life. It could actually shake the monarchy itself and make the world reconsider what it thinks it knows about the royals. Now, despite the skepticism, Simon's supporters point to his uncanny resemblance to Charles and Camilla, not to mention his sheer doggedness in pursuing this. Stories like his, which have captivated people across the globe, are the kind where some see his struggle as emblematic of a much larger issue, the lengths those in power will go to keep a truth from surfacing.
Wow, Simon joins us now from Brisbane. Thanks for joining us. Look, you've fought for decades to prove this, even take you to court. Why should anyone believe you?
Hey, well, good morning, Koshi. Good morning, Nat. Well, I think the evidence speaks for itself. I mean, the face is what gives it away. That's what's caused the recent issue with Liam's photo. It was just a photo I put up that we were in the weekend in Bribey Island fishing, and I just shared it with the people on the page, and the lady took the photo and changed it to black and white, rotated it, and put it alongside the Queen. I mean, I see it every day. You know, every day when I get up in the morning and the kids speak to me, the first thing I see when I turn around is that.
But is Simon really convinced he deserves royal recognition? Or is his fight driven by something deeper? The need to find out who he really is and where he fits in. What sets this bloke apart is his persistence. Years of ridicule and official silence have been met time and time again by his steady presence in the media, speaking to anyone who will listen to his story, getting closer to the truth with each appearance. Charles and Camilla's romance isn't your typical royal love story. It's a saga that started long before the public really came to know what was going on. While their official relationship timeline goes back to the early 1970s, there have been whispers for years about a closer-than-friendship dynamic between these two. This isn't some storybook royal meets commoner tale. Either Charles and Camilla were drawn to each other in a way that defied all the conventional expectations. They first crossed paths at a polo match back in 1970. The young Prince of Wales and this vibrant commoner whose outgoing personality soon won his admiration. But theirs was never going to be a straightforward love story. Charles was dispatched on duty, and by 1973, Camilla had gone and married Andrew Parker Bowles.
Charles and Camilla's love story is long and complicated. Before the prince married Diana in 1981, he was allegedly still in love with one of his former girlfriends, Camilla Parker Bowles. Their love story has been well documented over the years, with Diana famously addressing the rumour in this BBC interview.
But despite Camilla tying the knot, her affair with Charles was anything but over. When the two reunited in the mid-1980s, even though Charles was very much still married to Princess Diana, their romance became the talk of the town.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Now let's fast forward to Simon Durante Day's claims. His timeline for adoption cuts right into the time when Charles and Camilla were reportedly inseparable. He was born in 1966, and he says he was adopted at a small age, which just so happens to line up with his belief that Charles and Camilla may have had a kid in secret. The plot thickens even further when you factor in all the secrets, family dynamics, and the royal protocols dictating who a young prince could and couldn't marry. The firm had worked overtime to keep Charles's relationship with Camilla secret by the time he tied the knot with Diana in 1981. But, as we all know, that marriage was anything but a fairy tale, what with Diana eventually blowing the lid off Charles and Camilla's ongoing romance.
1993, an intimate conversation between Camilla and Charles was leaked, confirming the couple's illicit relationship. It ultimately led to the end of Charles' marriage to Diana and Camilla's marriage to her husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. At the time, Charles refused to give in to the speculation.
She has been a friend for a very long time, and along with a lot of other friends, and will continue to be a friend for a very long time.
But in 2005, the pair finally tied the knot, celebrating their 15th wedding anniversary last April.
Simon's story fits right into that period, leaving many folks wondering, could the royal family have actually orchestrated an adoption?
But one Aussie isn't convinced the world knows their true story. Simon Durante Day claims to be their secret love child, and he says this photo is the key to unlocking the 55-year-old mystery.
Simon Durante Day has spent years chasing the one thing that would prove his claim once and for all, a good old-fashioned DNA test. And each time he's gotten close, the silence from the family at the other end has been deafening. But that sure hasn't deterred him. Simon's journey through the courts and public pleas reflects his unwavering drive to uncover the truth. He's taken every legal avenue to stand up for himself, even going to the UK courts. Now, these courts have put up one heck of a fight against him, but this bloke, Simon, who's been refused again and again, hasn't lost that determination one bit. But why has the royal family sidestepped Simon's request for a DNA test? Well, for starters, such a test would come with some major consequences. Not just for Simon, but for the monarchy as a whole. Just imagine what kind of fallout there'd be if Simon's claims turned out to be true. It'd be a spotlight shown on certain aspects of the royals' lives that they'd probably prefer stayed firmly in the back of the closet, raising all sorts of questions about legacy, secrecy, and procedure. Outside the palace walls, Simon's been swept up in a tide of media coverage, with some champions in his corner and plenty of doubters branding him an attention seeker. But one question that lingers is, why hasn't the monarchy given a clear answer? To outsiders looking in, this can only add more mystery on top of mystery. As Simon Durante Day himself said, if there's nothing to hide, why not take the test and put the rumors to bed? Simon Durante Day's journey from obscurity to international intrigue has relied not only on his sheer persistence, but also on the convincing bits of proof that he and his believers' claims are incontrovertible. The supposed physical likenesses have really formed the backbone of this conspiracy. Simon's posted all sorts of side-by-side snaps of himself and his kids alongside members of the British royal family, and the facial similarities are downright uncanny. Some of these pics, especially the ones comparing his son to a young Queen Elizabeth, are so spot on that plenty of onlookers are convinced these can't just be a coincidence. Simon Durante Day said, "My grandmother, who had worked for the Queen, told me outright that I was Camilla and Charles' son many times. She didn't just hint at it, she told me outright." Simon's story extends past the photos and family accounts to social media, where a growing band of supporters hangs on his every move. The regular updates, court battles, and media interviews he provides, his followers have created a real sense of loyalty towards his cause. Many insist Simon's tale isn't about royal intrigue at all, but more to do with his rights to know who he is biologically.
Now, a Brisbane man who claims to be the secret love child of Prince Charles and Camilla has sparked fierce debate after sharing what he says is new photographic evidence.
Simon Durante Day believes he is the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall's son, born out of wedlock and adopted to a family who had strong ties to the Queen.
According to Simon Durante Day, this isn't about scandal, it's about peace of mind and proving his family connection.
This is People seem to think I'm getting a big name and money out of this. I'm not getting anything out of this. This is costing me to do this. We're forced to do this because we're tired of moving around Australia hiding this secret that's not our secret.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the problems that we've had.